What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast. Today, we are seeing the return of Brendan Murphy, author, speaker, podcaster himself. We have an amazing conversation diving deep into some of the themes of his work, his first book, The Grand Illusion, and his upcoming book, The Grand Illusion 2, diving into, nature of reality. What is beyond the veil? What is consciousness? What happens when one dies? Does this experience continue? Well, what is heaven? Some of these are fascinating conversations and questions we get into right here. I think you guys are really going to get a lot of value out of it for sure. Right before we bring Brendan on, Rise Above the Herd. The next round starts again October 15th. This is our 10-week psycho-spiritual program, basically designed to give you an up level in every single area of your life, for you to dig deep, to live more authentically, and to really create a reality for yourself that is more aligned with the true nature of who you are. So if you're down, you can head to riseabovetheherd.co and submit an application to join the program right there. Okay, enjoy this episode.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
Brendan Murphy is an author, speaker, and researcher known for integrating spirituality and science. His book, The Grand Illusion, challenges materialist views of reality, presenting consciousness as the foundation of existence. He explores themes like the holographic nature of the universe and the brain as a receiver of consciousness. He's also the founder of Truthiversity, a platform for raising consciousness, and facilitates personal growth through his Evolve Yourself program, helping individuals accelerate their spiritual and personal evolution. He first joined us, it was a while ago now, episode 90, and we got into a bunch of stuff there. I think aliens, New Age, Christian flip, modern medical lies, things like that. But anyway, man, we're now neighbors. We're both living in San Miguel de Allende here in beautiful central Mexico. Got to hang out a few times, get the families together. It's been awesome, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good. It's good to be here back with you too. And stoked to be neighbors too, man. It's awesome. Life is a weird, wild ride.
Life is a weird, wild ride, and such a trip. Like, both also being from, I think we were both born in Sydney, then never meeting in Australia really, then connecting here in Mexico in person. It's trippy for sure. Yeah. Man, I want to get into some of the meat and bones of your book, because we didn't really get deep into that realm last time we spoke. So I guess initially, what kind of inspired the Grand Illusion?
I mean, that's basically the long story short of it is I had experiences that concretized the ideas that were put forward in a book that I read when I was 20, I think. And the book was called The Holographic Universe. It's pretty well known. So that book came into my life through my brother, who was 3 years younger. He was still at school. He came home one day. He was like, there's this young guy. He gave a talk, but he kept going off topic. He was supposed to be talking about business, and he kept going back to this other book. And so I was like, okay. And my brother felt compelled to let me know about that. He didn't often come home with book recommendations or whatever. So I put that on the back burner for 6 months, and eventually got around to reading it. Blew my mind, opened up my awareness of possibilities. And then, I started having experiences the first mystical experience I ever had. I was lying in bed, not long after having, read this book and integrated, and, I was just lying in bed, and suddenly I was like infinite consciousness. And so that was kind of the beginning of, well, obviously that's a very big paradigm shift for most people to realize that. So the message of the book is basically, I'm conveying that from as many different angles as I possibly could, and researching it from as many different angles as possible. So pulling different fields of research together, showing that the message at the end of the day is the same. Consciousness is the basis of reality.
Yeah. So what was the book that your brother brought to you?
That was The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So we hear I've heard this term a lot, holographic universe, but what does that mean?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is in a hologram, I guess the core idea is that all information in the hologram exists at every point within the hologram. So if you have a holographic photo the holographic photographic paper. You take an image, you can imprint the information of the image into the paper, the film. But it's like if you cut it into pieces, you get in a holographic piece of film, you get the whole image in every little fragment. Whereas if you broke like a mirror, you get little fragmentary pieces of the whole. But in a holographic film, you get the entire image in every piece of it, in every fragment. So essentially the idea that all the information for, like if we take a photo of Joel, and it's with holographic film, you break it apart, you shine a light on it, you get the entire image of Joel in every little fragment of broken film. So the information that codes for Joel, all of it is completely present in every point. So to apply it to the cosmos, all information exists at any point you go to in the cosmos that we exist in. So you can access, at least in principle, all information anywhere you go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, because when I like, I guess in times of personal reflection and contemplation, like I've felt like everything can be known just by like examining what's happening within me. And it's almost like the same kind of principles apply on every layer. Is this something that would fit into this concept that you're talking about a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. That's it. Yeah, exactly. And we're just kind of like filters or prisms that the information field operates through. So, like you said, you can sit in contemplation and access all sorts of information. There's no real limit to that either.
Yeah. So like, what does this mean? Like for a human being coming into this knowledge, like how did this impact you, I guess? And like, how should this be impacting people? And how can they utilize this to be like, oh, wow, my consciousness is shifting or is more than I thought it was?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, like that's Amy's asked me that question so many times, like, why does it matter to you? Why do you care that, like, what are you trying to convey to people? And I'm always like, look, I don't know. Like, it's just really interesting. Like but it turns our standard models of reality completely upside down. So now you have a basis, at the very least, you have a basis for the idea that consciousness, first of all, doesn't come into existence through, a physical body, through a nervous system, through a brain. So we can now have a starting point for understanding, well, we can survive the death of the physical body, like where we are immortal. And in essence, we are immortal. Like the thing that created us, which is us, is immortal. It's not subject to, the rules of time and space and all these sorts of ideas.
Yeah. So like, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, like that belief, like how does that impact you in terms of how you live your life? Like,
the belief of
that, like we're immortal, does that like impact you in a different way? Do you live differently because of that?
Yeah, because you realize obviously that your choices have consequences. Like, we all, nobody gets out alive, so to speak, but you will survive. Your consciousness continues to exist. So the thing is, the nature of that existence after the body stops working is determined by the kind of life that you have lived and like what you have made of yourself and what you've become. So, there's tremendous value in self-development and the kind of stuff that you guys do in Wrath and actually, working on who you are and being a better person. So that is, in the end analysis, that's like, we learn that from the field of near-death experiences is rife with that message. It's like, what you become in the afterlife is what you make of yourself, here and now. And there are essentially consequences for the choices that we make.
Whereas I think with the realization that the game doesn't end, like the weights of every single choice that we make now is so much greater, especially with the psychological awareness of like every decision I make is either like, casting a shadow if it's based in like lies and illusion and falsehood, or it's leading me towards growth and potential. And I can, I mean, that's actually quite profound. Like, it's not like you can just come here, run amok, do whatever the fuck you want, and then get a clean slate, at the end of the day.
So would you say that, like, if we're thinking of talking about reincarnation and the soul lives on, that like there's always like an incremental like progress? So let's say like I'm living my life now as Yerasimos, and I'm doing the best I can to be as conscious and healthy and and live with integrity, that like that's going to continue on, as opposed to, no, I'm going to revert back in the next life and I'm going to, you know, be someone who lies, cheats, and steals, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like that's part of it. Yeah, that's part of the game, and you know there are different levels to it, because if you go up, you know, to what you could call higher levels of you know, like identity, higher levels of consciousness, then you get a much broader bird's eye view of yourself. Like you realize, oh well, I'm this self, but I'm all these other selves as well, scattered through time. You know, the illusion of time and space. Maybe you get to see, well, you've got personalities or different versions of you that are living in, you know, faraway galaxies, and, you know, completely different cosmoses with different physical laws and rules and just all sorts of weirdness. But that is all part of you. So there's like, as you go up, like say dimensional levels, you get access to more of yourself, but also your concepts of time change with that. So you could see, or your say past lives would become kind of like present to your awareness as a higher entity that is emanating those personalities. I might be going a bit off track with that, but hopefully that's...
No, not at all. I'm curious more on a personal level. Like, have you experienced like these lives that you've lived previously or potentially in the future again?
Or simultaneously.
Or simultaneously. And then like, how do you integrate that and go, well, this is real, as opposed to potentially some like hallucination or imagination? And is there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good question. A lot of people out there, like there's a massive body of research on you know, past life stuff, past life regression. Like you guys would have heard of it. At the very least, I know Joel's familiar. I'm sure you are. Like, so we have multiple different practitioners in the realm of hypnotherapy, past life regression stuff, who've produced essentially the same body of information independently replicating each other, which is really interesting because we're talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands of people around the world who've gone and had this work done on themselves to access this type of information in altered states of consciousness. And what they come back with is essentially the nature of it is more or less the same in essence, time and time again. So it's a very interesting kind of empirical body of data, and people are absolutely convinced that the information they've accessed is real, and the experience that they are having when they go into, you know, the interlife, their life between lives realms, that is completely real. People are very, very convinced about the reality of that, as distinct from, you know, they say that world is more real than this world, and that's what the near-death crowd also says. Like, it was so much more real than this life here.
Yeah, I can't remember if we talked about it on our first chat together, but I remember reading a very long time ago Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, and that had a huge impact on me at the time. You know, I feel like it's kind of faded a little bit, but it was fascinating that you can put someone through hypnotherapy and then they would have these experiences. And not only that, I think the thing that really impacted me the most was that like this person, when she was under hypnosis, was able to tell things to Dr. Weiss that he had never told anyone before. You know, so yeah, my mind just goes like, fucking how, you know, how, like it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah. And that's pretty normal in that space. And that's coming in the NDE world as well. You know, people come back with information that they shouldn't have had access to even under normal circumstances, but even more so when their physical body was dead at the time, like clinically dead, and they're coming back with information that, by, you know, from a conventional point of view, they shouldn't have had access to. So that's compelling. That's worth pondering on for sure. That's very significant, and it changes people's lives. You know, they're forever, like that client of Dr. Weiss's was forever altered because of that treatment. And he went in a completely different direction in his life's work. Yeah. I mean, completely radically changed him. He was so moved by the information. I think she came up with stuff about his dad and his son, and it was very profound to you know, for that to happen to him, because it was so personal, so close to home. And yeah, it's like, well, okay, so we're not just meat sacks anymore. We're something much, much bigger than that, and much more complex than that. You know, we're not just, you know, that attitude of so many people have of when you're dead, and that's it, like game over. Well, you know, it turns out it's a lot harder to die than we thought.
Yeah, I want to bring up something that happened to me recently. I mean, you might be aware that my father passed away in February, and I met someone through our little like health or freedom community here in LA. And I ran into her at the farmer's market, and she just like came up to me, and like she didn't know me very well, and she's like, "I got a message from your dad, to let you." And I was just like, "What?" And she came up to me really bluntly, and for me, I'm fine with that kind of thing. I could see how like to someone else like this, they might not be as cool with you coming forth like that. And I was just like, "Oh, okay." And she said a few things that landed, but then I saw her a couple weeks later, and she came up to me, and she said, "I got another message from your dad, and he wants you to know that he's proud of you, and he didn't understand everything that you did in this life from his vantage point, but he gets it all now, and he understands that." And I like, obviously it hits me emotionally because it resonates, but then I'm like, but like, I just don't understand it, on some level too. Like I sense it and I can believe it, but then I'm like, well, I'd like to talk to him, I'd like to connect to him, and maybe one day I will, but you hear that very often, I mean, this isn't the first time that I've come across someone who, can connect to the other world in this way, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that, and if you've had personal experience with something like that as well.
Yeah. I've had stuff like that as well. Like it's very powerful when it happens. Like for example, my pop, my dad's dad, back when I sort of got into this world, like I was only 20, so I've been in it for 21 years now. Like, so I've experienced a lot of weirdness that would probably freak a lot of people out. One of the early ones was a psychic reading in like I spent 2 years going to a spiritualist church in Sydney, and they would do these like Sunday kind of like services, kind of like a bit churchy, but with the spiritualist twist on it. And they would have like a guest medium come in and like do readings for the audience kind of thing. And one of them one day was she singled me out, and she was like, "Oh, I've got your pop here." And this is a woman off the street. She's no idea who I am. She's no way of knowing anything about me. And this is obviously, back in 20 years ago, like the internet was very, very different. We're not podcasting. I'm not, on Instagram or any of that stuff. Like there's no public information about me. And she's like, "I've got your pop here." So first of all, she knows that he's dead, even though she knows nothing about me. And then she's like, "Oh, okay, so he's showing me like his tattoo on his shoulder." I'm like, "Okay, well or his arm, wherever it was." And I was like, "Okay, well he did have tattoos there." And then she started going on about, "Oh, he's saying, you've been thinking about getting a tattoo." And honestly, like I'm 20 years old. In the 2 weeks leading up to this meeting was the only 2 weeks of my life I'd ever pondered getting a tattoo. Like the rest of my life didn't think about it at all. But the 2 weeks leading up to this church service, I was thinking about it. I was like, what would I get? I don't know. What would I get? And so she's going, "Well, he's here and he's saying, don't get a tattoo because you're going to be stuck with it forever. Like, don't do it. It's not a great idea." So I'm like, okay, so this one's pretty good. And then she starts going on about his little bird, and he had a little pet budgerigar, and he would get it out of the cage and, let it sort of hop up and down his arm and fly around the room and stuff. So she's talking about his pet budgie and what he would do. He would talk to it and, all this stuff. And it was like everything she said was absolutely accurate, absolutely spot on, including knowing that I was thinking about getting a tattoo when the rest of my life I'd never thought twice about it. So yeah, I've had lots of experiences like this.
Yeah.
The research into mediums is pretty extensive now, and it's verified, like under rigorously controlled conditions. People like Dr. Gary Schwartz have run ridiculously controlled experiments with mediums of all sorts, like Alison Dubois and James Van Praagh and John Edward and all these famous psychic types. Under conditions where it's impossible for somebody to cheat, it's impossible for somebody to fake their way through getting information. And long story short is these types of psychics, the legitimate ones, they pass the test with flying colors. I mean, some of them are scoring in the 90s, 95, 98% accuracy with absolutely no idea who they're doing the psychic reading for even, and getting no informational feedback as to, well, that was accurate, that's not accurate. Nothing at all. Like they're completely blind as you can get, and the information's very, very accurate.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna butcher this story. Sorry, Alyssa, in advance. But so I think it's her auntie. Some time ago, her auntie's husband died. He passed away, right? And in, Wog traditions, when they're buried, he's got a full suit on, he's got all these jewelry, everything in the coffin, and he's buried. And then she kept getting these visions or these dreams, where like she was sensing that he was cold. He was really, 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 really cold. And like she could not shake it. It was so recurring, it was so prevalent, so prominent. And this is extremely out of the ordinary. But she commissioned the funeral home to go and re-dig up the coffin to kind of see what was going on. And upon finding him, he was completely naked. His suit was gone, his jewelry was gone, everything was gone. He was literally cold and naked, like this vision that she was getting. So like, it's like someone grave robbed, but so like, how does that happen? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, even premonition dreams, like I've had premonition dreams before where I have a dream and then I wake up and then the next day it's a reality. It happens, it's like,
yeah.
You were going to say something, but you were going to say something in response to Joel.
Yeah. That's an interesting one because it's like, well, the spirit, like his soul isn't there hanging out in the ground. Like, so the choice of words, like that particular message of I'm cold is quite an interesting one. Like that's not, it would have been easy. You would think it'd be easy to go, hey, like I'm naked, like they've stolen my clothes.
Maybe it was I'm naked. Like maybe like I'm recalling the story third hand or whatever.
But yeah, sometimes communications happen like that. I had go ahead, bro.
Well, I was going to say that you bring up an interesting point because then it just goes into like the difference between what does a soul experience? Like, do they experience temperature? You know what I mean? Like what I just think, like what is these beings, these entities that communicate to people on Earth, like what is their personal experience? I'm not, obviously I don't think the exact answer. You can hypothesize, maybe there's research on it, but like I think about that. Like even in Joel's story, like is he like, ooh, like I'm shivering?
But is there like, I mean, I've heard like there's some kind of like a limbo period potentially, like where people are still hanging around, like kind of like Earthside checking in, seeing what's going on. Like maybe like, this was something that was affected this soul.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like there's a spectrum of experience that's possible with someone who, when people cross. So like you get the people who are very, very strongly identified with the physicality. And so they tend to be very earthbound. And they might have like, the thing is that not everybody who dies realizes that they're dead either. Like a lot of the information we get is about someone who's even died suddenly or whether they've died in their sleep. And then, somebody non-physically in their spirit world has had to come to them and try to explain to them that their situation has changed and they're not actually alive in the physical anymore. And sometimes that's a really difficult conversation to have because they're so viscerally, they feel so viscerally alive still that they can't believe that they're dead. So they think that this other person who's trying to do them a favor by helping them understand is a raving lunatic. Like, what are you talking about? I'm dead. I'm right here. I can feel my skin. I'm warm. Like all this stuff. Like they are having a full sensory experience, like we do in the physical. So yeah, there's a range of experiences.
There's movies where those scenes like that play out too, where someone dies, but then they think they're alive and they're tripping out because the other spirits are trying to tell them, yo, you're dead, bro.
But there's like it sounds like that, like there's guides, whether they're related or not, whatever it might be, Very, very interesting.
Like I don't want to die. I'm going to, but like I'm so curious.
Yeah.
Like I'm so curious, and even more so since experiencing my father's death. Like this is like kind of catapulted me in a new level of curiosity around death and around what happens and where did my father go, and he did have a lovely peaceful death relative to like how other people go, and it's like in that moment, like again, you could read about it. There's NDEs, research and stuff, but that personal experience, I'm like, man, I can't wait, but I can wait. You know what I mean? It's like both.
Yeah. Don't worry, man. You'll get there.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because there's a lot of communication from the other side of the veil, and it seems to be getting easier as well. And what they're telling us is over and over, like all sorts of different ways to die, different types of experience. But yeah, like for the most part, most people experience it if they're conscious through the process in an extremely positive, amazing, uplifting, joyous kind of a way. It's like the most amazing experience, and that's a message from the NDE research realm over and over. It's like that was the best thing ever happened to me. Dying is the best experience ever. All that kind of stuff, and it's we get a lot of information from across the veil about what their existence is like and what it was like when they were first realizing that they were dead, and how they process that information, whether they had a traumatic death, what kind of state was their psyche in, like they have a lot of emotional baggage, because then that's something that has to be kind of like worked through and processed.
Suicide would be probably gnarly to grapple with.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like you don't want to do that. It's not a solution, because the body is a damping mechanism. Like the body filters out like feeling, and so when you get rid of the body and you're just left with the non-physical bodies, then you are going to be in a pretty like not an awesome condition. You're going to be like, oh shit, well, I'm still here and my problems are still here, but now I've really fucked up because I can't do anything like about my physical life to move that forward or solve things. So here I am, and apparently what I've gathered so far is that when people have their lives cut short unnaturally, like whether it's suicide or just hit by a bus or something, like when it's not their time, they tend to have to stay kind of like in this sort of limbo in between earthbound kind of state until the natural like time frame of their natural life expires, which is yeah, it's kind of I wasn't really expecting that when I was
so if you die at like 25, it's obviously further away from what would be considered natural. So you're just kicking it in earthbound for like another 50 years or so.
Wouldn't that correlate to like traditional ideas of like haunting, as well? Like if someone's died unnaturally like that, then if they're still in that place, like would be quote unquote haunted, obviously without the, the stigma that comes with that, so to speak. There's a non-physical life that occupies this place as well. I think about, like Palestine, thousands of kids, men, women, whatever, and their lives ending unnaturally. Like, would there be like a big conglomerate of non-physical life in that place, just hanging out?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's one possibility. The thing is, people's belief systems have a lot to do with whether or not there is whether or not they can move on, and whether or not somebody in the spirit world can come and intervene and effectively and help them. There are teams of like workers in the non-physical realms who are, devoted to dealing with crisis situations and helping people transition. Like, okay, like someone's just died, we're going to go over there and help them, like not freak out. You're still alive, but just not in the same way anymore. And then when it's like mass disasters, like the Palestine thing, mass atrocities. They have teams of people like going into these areas to basically shepherd people into the appropriate kind of realm in the afterlife realms, because there's not just one place. Like people's belief systems largely dictate the immediate kind of post-mortem experience and where they go. So yeah, there's a lot that happens, and there's a lot that's possible. It's not necessarily just like one thing,
Do you think there's like a different realm for each like Abrahamic religion? Like the Christians go to this realm, and then Muslims go to that realm, and, Jews go to this realm.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what the research shows us, which is, it's kind of funny, but it's like, that's what happens because people's belief systems are what, divide them. And, what you identify with is what you gravitate towards. So I'm getting to like everything we're talking about. I just want to say for the listeners, everything we're talking about, I've gone into in like unbelievable depth here. Like I'm painting the picture in a way that I don't think anybody has really. So yeah, there's like a belief system heaven for every belief system, every religion. There are no Buddhists in, a Christian heaven. There's no Jews in the, so on. So like there are, what happens is people construct a virtual reality kind of simulation that matches what they believed in their physical life. They go there and then they're happy, like they're at least comfortable They're not too disoriented.
It's expected.
It's expected. And that's kind of the whole point in a way. And the problem with a lot of like the belief systems that we have is they're not very enlightened. There's not a lot of like self-awareness that's part of the deal. So a lot of these people end up in like a Christian fundamentalist kind of heaven, and they think that they've made it to heaven, and that's it, like game over kind of thing. And then somebody who's outside of that system has to kind of come in and go, okay, so who, like, they have to kind of, it's almost like you get these souls coming in undercover to go, okay, who here is kind of starting to question the reality that they're in? Like, who's having a little bit of doubt? Like, and that doesn't add up, and that seems a bit off. And those people, they'll single out in a way to go and like communicate with them and go, hey, this is not actually heaven. This is just your Christian belief system heaven. And, there's this other place that we can, move on to kind of thing. And, kind of like start planting seeds and having conversations with them to start getting their scope of awareness to expand and move on, so they're not stuck in these places.
So you're saying that there is like a realer and more genuine afterlife or realm heaven beyond the dogmatic kind of sections as well?
Yeah. Like the Monroe Institute refers to them as belief system territories. And they're all kind of like, I place them in my model. It's basically just all kind of like low mid-astral kind of simulated realities where the beliefs that you have create this holographic world that seems really real and convincing. But beyond that, there's infinity. There's all these other different realities that are waiting to be reconnected with and remembered. And all we're doing by being dogmatic in our beliefs is just kind of like delaying the process and running the risk of like kind of retarding your spiritual growth and development, and maybe unnecessarily reincarnating if you don't necessarily need to, or doing it in a way that's not very calculated and well prepared. Or it's just not, it's not a good. You don't want to be stuck in a belief system territory. It's not the end game. It's just a very temporary phase for someone who's got a very limited outlook.
Well, I just want to say that I look forward to the three of us hanging out in this lifetime. Yeah. But when we get to that belief territory afterlife, like shit's gonna go off, guys.
Yep. So many inappropriate jokes that could follow.
But it's cool to think about. Like, it's cool to contemplate. Like, I don't know for sure, but like, I don't know, like having this conversation now, it's like, I can feel like my cells buzzing. Like, it's exciting. It's cool to think about. So,
okay. So what is this experience and why are we having it?
I would say universally in the realm of, it depends on your reference frame who you're asking, but in the realm of like the NDE crowd and the past life regression crowd, the answer is it's basically just a school. It's an experience. It's just part of a very temporary stage in our overall spiritual growth and development, and it's a way to have a particular type of experience that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And it's entirely done by choice, voluntarily. Nobody forces us to be here, and we're not trapped. It's not a soul trap. It's not a soul harvesting, whatever. The archons aren't in charge. All of this sort of stuff. That's not how it works. Yeah, like, oh no, like let's extend our victim mentality into the non-physical realm as well. Like, no.
Yeah. So like, are there we refer to Earth as a school. Are there like levels or like grades? Is this like one level? And is there like do you graduate if you want to come back and have another experience? Do you graduate to like a different kind of grade?
Yeah, that's possible because there's endless realms to potentially go into and explore and be a part of. But it's funny you use the word graduate because that is part of the lexicon of the Monroe Institute as well. Like, just as there's so many different answers that we could give, but that's one aspect of it. It's like the graduates of this system, what they call the Earth Life system, are basically people who have managed to embody unconditional love. Like, that's kind of what it boils down to. Like, it's like the challenge here is to overcome like life circumstances and a biological framework that is kind of inimical to the experience of unconditional love. So it's kind of, in a way, it's like the ultimate challenge. So we're here to as I said, learn to love, and do it in a way that's like as unconditional, as broad, as agenda based as possible. And the people who do that to the fullest extent are the ones who, graduate and move on to, whatever comes next. Maybe they just go back to their oversoul group, the soul cluster, and just, hang out there for an indefinite amount of time. Or, we can talk about, there's ideas of like nirvana and this nirvana and that nirvana and, liberation. And I'm not really a fan of a lot of that talk because at the end of the day, I don't think that I think it lacks nuance, and it presumes too much. Like at the core of experience and at the core of existence is a mystery that no one can really unravel. It's like there's a mystical tradition that says that liberation is just another form of Maya, another form of illusion. So where does that leave those people? Like being really attached to that sort of
I mean, being liberated from what ultimately?
Yeah, like
from oneself, really. When people want liberation, I think on an unconscious level, they're begging for liberation from themselves,
from being human.
Yeah. Or just being their consciousness,
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like Earth life is pretty hard. Like, let's be real. Like it's not easy, but if you think that your highest purpose for being here is to get the hell out of here, then no, like you've actually missed the point of why you're here in the first place.
Yeah. I know someone who's influenced you on your journey has been the material of David Icke in some ways. And David Icke I disagree with him on this level. I think what you're saying kind of differs as well. Like he kind of comes from the perspective that this is some place to escape from, is what I've seen, generally speaking.
Yeah. Someone sent me because I haven't read any of his stuff for ages.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I've kind of moved on. Someone sent me like 6 pages of one of his recent books about, I think it was The Trap. And because they mentioned it to me, like, people ask me, like, what do you think about this idea, the soul trap or whatever? And I was like, can you send me something? What's he talking about? And there wasn't really any substance to it. It was kind of like he's kind of got one foot in one camp and one foot in the other camp. Like his foundational message for 30 years is infinite love is the only truth and everything else is illusion. Well, if infinite love is the only truth, then what is the truth of life here? Like, isn't that just another variation of the theme? Like, what are we trying to escape from? I mean, his paradigm, his foundation is the same as mine. It's infinite consciousness. And I speak from experience with that. It's not a belief, it's an experience that I've had multiple times. So for me, it's not abstract in the slightest. And I'm like, well, that's the container that all my other realities exist within, like infinity. So if we are infinite, what is there to escape from? What is there to run away from? Who can keep us trapped or imprisoned? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. No, I hear that.
I mean, self-imposed amnesia is one thing. Like, people come in here, they go through a process of forgetting, like they drink from the river of forgetfulness, so to speak. And we have to do that. That's part of the experience of being here, is sublimating the rest of our memories and the data of who we are, like on a multi-dimensional, massive timeline kind of scale, like all these other cells. We sublimate that. That's part of the deal. And we know that coming in because it allows us to focus on having this life's experience and just optimizing that experience rather than being distracted by, oh my God, I did all this horrible stuff in these other lives, and, getting sidetracked and wallowing in self-pity or whatever. Like, we're supposed to be focused on this life. Like Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos are supposed to live the best versions of themselves that they can possibly fucking manage. Like, that's it. That's your focus. And that's my focus as Brendan. Like, I get to be Brendan this one time. And that's it. Like, whatever comes after that, I don't know. And we're not supposed to know. And I don't know what came before it either, because we're not really supposed to have that information either. Like, some people come in with a little bit of past life memory, but not much in the grand scheme of things. Like, we're not supposed to have it. And there are energetic reasons for that as well. Like, Bruce Mullen went into a lot of this stuff where he watched people. He was a colleague of Monroe's, and he watched in his out-of-body states souls coming into the Earth life system. And there's a sort of a tower, what he perceived as a sort of a tower with like 2 bell structures opposite. I'm sure Dan Winter would have a lot to say about that structure, but people would go through, their souls would come through, and there would be like a central point where they would be compressed. And the soul, it's like the energy field goes from like here down to here. There's this compression process so that we can not just like intentionally forget about the rest of, the selves, but our history, but also to survive the energetic noise and chaos of life on Earth. Like, because as far as he could discern, if we had the normal expanded energy field that we do when we're non-physically oriented, if we had that in Earth life, we would not be able to function. Like, there is so much emotional noise being broadcast and mental noise being broadcast by millions and millions of other people that we wouldn't be able to function here unless we had that kind of compression happen.
Yeah, I mean, even just being an individual now, just me as Yerasimos, like, I got to deal with enough mental, emotional stuff that then I have access to all my previous lives and everything else. Like, I don't know how I would be able to even tune into the frequency of functioning.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be so vast. It'd be an endless like source of distraction as well. You're like, oh, what life do I want to rewatch today? Yes. That one was fun. Let's tune into that. Like, it doesn't serve a constructive purpose. So we block it out temporarily.
Yeah, it seems like there's an overlap here also with like the Kabbalistic tree of life, starting from the crown Ketzah and then moving into like grosser realms where things become denser and more physical, so to speak. It's very, very interesting for sure. So where is consciousness located?
Yeah, everywhere and nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the foundation of reality. So everywhere you go, there is already an infinite consciousness, a substrate of infinite consciousness present already. Like, this is the holographic idea again, like it's already there. And that was the core experience in my first mystical experience, was being a point of awareness in an infinite field of awareness, which was it's very hard to describe. Like, you're vast on a level of vastness that you can't put into words. And it's almost a sense of expanding, but everywhere you expand, you're already there. It's very difficult to kind of convey that.
No, I get it, man. I've actually had similar experiences, which I held on to as very, very, real and tangible, and, but I think as I've become too objective, those experiences have started to like, slip a little bit, but I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my answer to that. So consciousness is the only thing that's actually real. Like, everything that exists is a manifestation of consciousness, the field of consciousness, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it. One of the chapters of book 1 was chapter 6 was to get into that, and from a different angle, like to show that we've got some really interesting research around that, like clairvoyant research into subatomic matter, which shows that matter is just these tiny little like nano tornadoes, nano vortices. It's the field of like the etheric medium, or the field of consciousness, spinning in a way as to create bubbles, essentially bubbles, like bubbles in a fish tank. So what ends up looking like matter, physical matter to us, is it actually emptiness, nothingness, geometrically arranged. Like, it's just pressure in the field of consciousness. And there's no difference to me. Like, there's no duality to me. It's all one thing manifesting in endless variety of ways.
So would you say that like this statement, the physical world is an illusion? Is that something that you would say, or would you just word it in a, I mean?
I mean, I agree with that in the sense that it's a temporary, creation. It's a construct. It's a dream. People call it a simulation. I'm sympathetic to that because of the the nature of my journey and the research I've done. It's accurate. It's just, I don't necessarily like it when people use it in a way that it's like, oh, well, we should diminish the experience. We should try to block it out. We should try to, it's like the Catholic like self-flagellation thing. I'm a shitty little human. Like, I've got this filthy body in this fallen world kind of. We've got variations on that theme still today, like in the sort of alternative communities. And I don't sympathize with that like way of looking at it, and like the sort of negative overtones that some people use when they say, oh, it's an illusion. It is in a sense, definitely, but it does.
There's also the common flip side of it within spiritual certain spiritual types with the diminishment of suffering. Like suffering isn't real, trauma isn't real. Like none of that really should impact you. All you have to do is remember your eternal self. Then all of a sudden, you being raped doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I don't necessarily agree with that sort of mentality, because people will go, oh, well, like people who don't understand what you're saying will go, oh, well, so you're saying I can just go and do anything to anybody and it doesn't matter because it's an illusion, kind of like that's not what we're saying. And, like we said right at the start, there are choices for the consequences we make, consequences for the choices we make in the illusion, in the dream that we're having. Like, it's very much a dream world in the sense of it being kind of a construct and the creation of a conscious mind or being. But the difference is, like, you have a dream at night and you wake up and there aren't any real consequences for that. But when you wake up from this level of the dream, there are.
That's right. So if there's consequences, to me, can you really call it illusory? Because, if to call something illusory would imply that anything that takes place, any actions, behaviors, ultimately don't matter. But if what we're saying is that what we do here doesn't matter, then, despite the surface illusory nature of what it is, on a deeper level, it's not really that. It's still real.
Well, and even if it is an illusion, it seems like it's real. And so, like, if I were to take a knife to your arm, Joel, like, the statement physical reality is an illusion is kind of ridiculous when you think about it that way.
Yeah. 100%.
Anyways.
100%. Yeah. And that's the thing, like,
it's oversimplified. There's certain people that take certain spiritual concepts or principles and bastardize them and overly simplify them without greater context, and then, live in contradiction because they are, I guess, advocating for something overly simplistic and then denying other people's realities and perspectives around this subject. Those are my thoughts on that.
I think so. And I think most people who do that are kind of, they're very confused and usually have a lot of like unresolved kind of, shadow work to do, trauma and shit that they haven't processed. It's like, it's a way of trying to escape. And yeah, I don't agree with it. It's not helpful. Like we're all going to leave eventually, one way or another. But the manner in which we live or conduct ourselves in the illusion, like, it's not, the idea isn't to be saints and perfect. It's we're here to grow. Like, that's kind of the whole point of it. And it's like I said, what you make of yourself in this life here is what you are when you drop the body, the physical body, and then your non-physical self. You can't hide from that. Like, people, and this is data we have from the across the veil. It's like, oh well, I had to face what the hell I was and the life that I lived, and I did not like what I saw, and I was able to see all the people that I'd hurt and all the flow-on effects of that, and the people I'd never met who were affected by my stupid selfishness and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, within the illusion that we're operating in, you got to understand it's a game that's been designed for a reason. It's not just a temporary hallucination with no purpose. It does have a purpose, and that's why it matters.
Yeah, I'm curious because I don't know if we talked about it last time, but a lot of people bring up the analogy of like the whirlpool and the river. Like the river is consciousness, and then you're a whirlpool of that, and then you die, and then you go back into it. But like, even now we're talking about like our afterlife selves, our non-physical selves, where we're still somewhat individual. So how does that play into this whole conversation, as opposed to we die and then we just become this, like, we just dissolve into the oneness, and then there is no separation? Because again, even now some people bastardize and go, well, you're not a person, there's no separate person. And it's like, okay, but I sure it feels like it. I'm a separate person. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious, even that whole analogy, like the wave and the ocean, the whirlpool and the river, but then we're still non-physical, separate entities.
Yeah.
Gather what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the game. This is part of the game. Like, the non-dual, the field of non-duality, like the infinite one, dreams these dreams, and it has its own, kind of, apparently its own agenda or purpose. And so, like, Yerasimos doesn't exist as an accident, and Joel doesn't exist as an accident. Like, it's we are the river, we are the whirlpool, both at the same time. And it's a matter of where you focus your attention, your stream of attention, or the sutratman, to borrow like the Sanskrit term, where you focus that determines the kind of reality you experience. And they're all temporary in a sense. Like, you can focus at the level of the source, the creator, and have that incredible, vast non-duality and be infinite, but you will still have that point, that little pinpoint of I am this, like I am a unit of something, a unit of awareness in the greater field of infinity. And then
you're not a drop in the ocean, you're the ocean in a drop.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's where a lot of people who kind of, I think, lose the plot. Like you never will necessarily, it's like you talk about being dissolved into the river, but you will always retain that point of I. It's just the experience of the I will differ, and the sense of I-ness changes based on where we put our focus, like what kind of reality we're in.
Gotcha. I think there are those that, again, take to the extreme. They won't even say you're the drop, you're the whirlpool. They'll just say you're the ocean, and that's it. And I feel like that's limiting.
Yeah, I feel like that's, someone who's, just taking a little bit too, it's an unbalanced view. It's like, it's the middle way, is to say, well, it's both. Like we are all of that, all of it. And the separation, or the sense of separation, is legitimate and valid. And it's part of the simulation. It's part of the design. It's not the ultimate truth of what we are, but it's like you said, you take a knife to Joel's arm, he's probably not going to be happy about it. Like, even though we know intellectually that this is not real, like physically, there is no such thing as solid physicality, but it really seems like it if you punch a brick wall.
Yeah. Okay. How do you hold that, that there is no solid physicality, yet we feel the pain, like we feel solid physicality, like how do those things hold together?
Well, I don't know how, if I can tell you how. Like, that's just my reality. Like, that's like the physics that we have tells us that reality is not solid. Like, that's just modern physics now. It's emptiness. The ether physics that I get into in chapter 6 of book 1 shows that physical matter is emptiness, just like geometrically arranged empty. It's nothingness. And we've had a number of physicists say, like Einstein, say these types of things, or to talk about matter as just like solidified light. I can't explain how I like hold the tension of opposites, if that's kind of what you're driving at. It's just like,
yeah, but I mean, physicality though is a certain configuration of that emptiness. Like, sure, on a base level, it might all be emptiness, but the physical experience is a certain configuration of that, which leads to other experiences, such as touching a table, such as stabbing an arm, whatever it might be. But yeah, I understand on a scientific level what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer you in like a how kind of way.
Give me all the answers. Give me all the answers.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, like, because we're approaching things from an intellectual standpoint. Okay, well, the world is this way. Physics says this, but then my personal experience of it isn't emptiness. Getting punched in the face doesn't feel like emptiness. It's nice to pontificate and go, well, there's these experiments and these scientists that say that it's empty, but like, how does that serve my life on a day-to-day basis? Like, it's a fun intellectual exercise, but I again, anyways.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, man. Like, because ultimately we gotta live and function in what seems like a physical world, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah. And my other thing with like calling this experience an illusion, doesn't that imply that there's something that's less illusory or more real? And how does that work in the context of what we're saying, that all there is constructs and different experiences? So like, aren't then all the constructs and all the multitudes of experiences, quote unquote, illusory? And then posits the question, what is real then,
Right, yeah, exactly. And that's why I think some mystics say that even liberation and nirvana are just more maya, more illusion, because of what you're talking about. Like, my baseline of what is real is consciousness. Like, that's very broad. That's very like all encompassing. Like, for me, the only thing that exists is different modes of consciousness, like different modulations of a state of consciousness. Like, this is a state of consciousness. We're not accustomed to thinking of it like that. We're like, well, this is my physical body and my physical, I'm in my office or whatever. And it's like, well, the only reason you can have that perception is because you're in a particular state of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
modified. That's modified by the association with the physical body. And if the body stops working, then you have a different experience of reality and consciousness. And
Yeah. So I think it's kind of the same thing to say everything is an illusion or everything is reality.
yeah,
You end up in the same place.
you do, because that's right. Because what is reality? Like, it's just perception. It's perception. It's,
Yeah.
in a sense, like, it's not that there's an ultimate truth to anything. It's your consciousness processing information that is so-called reality.
Yeah.
So where are we right now?
I get with that.
Where are we right now? Like what's happening? Like where are we? Where is the central hub of this thing happening? You know?
How's the saying go? Like, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere.
Like am I like playing the video game somewhere else and like controlling myself having this podcast right now?
Yeah. Yes. But that's a legitimate, like, that's a great question, and there's data around that. Like, we have a lot of data around that stuff that says, you know, we are multidimensional beings. We exist in multiple places at once. Different versions of Joel, like just hierarchies of different levels of identification, and they get kind of, as you go up, they get broader and bigger and larger and more encompassing, and as you come down, they get smaller and smaller and smaller and more restricted. But yeah, we have this concept of like the oversoul or the higher self, which is choosing to inject itself, or, you know, to use the terminology like the theosophists and the occultists, like there's the monad, which sends a ray down to create the ego structure, and the ego sends a ray into physical reality to create a personality.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I gotta have a conversation with someone out there, and like, Joel, he needs a little upgrade. Can you come down and give him a little injection of something?
Projection.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a fucking upgrade too. Sure, why not? I'm trying to keep evolving, expanding after this life. You know.
Yeah, that's it. That's a spirit. Like, that's the whole point.
No, but I this is where I agree with you. It's like, I know that I exist. You know, I'm conscious. I'm aware of that, and like, I have life, and you know, like, what do I want to do with it, and how do I want to live, and how do I want to become a better person, and have more love. I mean, this is where I do really align with that, you know, thing about like, we're here to learn love, you know, and then what are our barriers to that, and what do we need to do to dissolve and remove those barriers so we could be more loving. That doesn't mean we just walk around like with no ability to set boundaries and have armor, and you know, we're just sitting there and going, I love everyone. Okay, I'm gonna stab you. Fuck you. I'm gonna rob you. You know what I mean? So like, this is a human being.
This is the thing. Like, how do you define love? How do you define learning love? Because obviously, it's not being all accepting, all forgiving, and boundaryless. Right?
Loving sometimes is telling someone to fuck off. You know, from the outside, that wouldn't seem like very loving.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I like M. Scott Peck's definition again, which is, you know, it's being interested in the spiritual development of another person. And genuinely, sometimes telling someone to fuck off is leading them down, you know, a spiritual development path.
Sometimes that's exactly the medicine that somebody needs in that moment. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I know in my life, like, sometimes someone setting a strong boundary or being clear or calling me out was like, okay, all right, I need to get off my high horse, and I need to reflect on a deeper level and see how I can integrate that and expand more. And, you know, like when Joel does it to me sometimes.
I was going to say, you're welcome, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Well, this is, and like, I think people have a general concept of like what love is, or what it means to them, at least. To me, it's like, okay, so I completely agree with everything you just outlined, like Yerasimos and you know, having boundaries and stuff. Like, that's part of self-love. Like, that's the foundation. Like, you got to start with self-love, and if you don't have that, and you don't have much, like, that's your foundation. So that is part of the game. It's like, okay, self-respect, self-worth, self-love, and you understand.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like, this.
What was that last thing that you said? Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, you go. What was the last thing you said?
No, you go. What?
The last thing you said got cut off. You know, I was talking over.
I was just saying, like, once you got that foundation, you expand from there. Like, you apply it outwards, right?
Yeah, and this is something where I think the English language at times falls short. And I've talked about this on previous podcasts. You know, the Greeks have 6 words for love. So you mentioned self-love. That's philotia. You know, and then there's like romantic love, and then there's playful love, and long-standing love, you know, that you would experience being in like a 20, 30, 40, 50-year partnership with Amy. You know, it's different than also just maybe a general like love of of humanity. And so I think it's interesting to think about that as well. I mean, sure, are you compartmentalizing it or like labeling it? But it's true. Like how I am with my dog, you know, is a little different than obviously how I am with my wife, you know, after 10 years being together. Like, you know, there's a joke somewhere in there. I'm waiting for it. Yeah. Or like how my love towards Joel, you know, like it's different, you know? So anyways.
Yeah. And you know, the modifier of like, you know, unconditional love is a really interesting one, because it's like, okay, so like without attachments and without an agenda, and that's challenging. That's really challenging. Like that's one of the ultimate challenges. I think like it's very easy to love somebody who's doing what, you know, you want them to do, or behaving themselves, or being civilized or whatever. But you know, I have a friend who he's about 70 now, who was living in Ahihi with us. He's still there. I had him on the podcast a while back, but Francis Ailey, and he was telling me about how he was trained with a martial artist, you know, one of these amazing sort of last of the lineage type guys from, you know, Japan or wherever it was. Forgive me for the vagueness there, but he was learning with this guy for 10 years straight. And one of the things he talked to him about was these challenges of, okay, like loving through different levels. Like there's like the basic level of like loving somebody who, you know, you're romantically involved with or whatever, all the way through to loving somebody who, you know, don't really like a whole lot, all the way through to loving an active enemy. Like, how do you love somebody who is actively your enemy, like who wants to tear you down and wants to hurt you? That's if you can do that, that's huge.
Yeah, but at what point does it like become self-sacrificial, this idea of unconditional love, you know?
Well, I wouldn't take it there. That's not what I'm suggesting at all.
No. Okay. I mean, listen, I'm not evolved enough to go, okay, let's say someone murdered both of you in front of me, like where I'm going to go give the guy a hug.
Yeah.
You know, but like, and is that the appropriate response? Is that the elevator response, or is it, I don't know. Like, I know John DeMartini brought up conversations around this in our talk with him on his workshops, where he had some type of exercise, and this woman like faced the person who killed her kids or something, and then like got them both crying and hugging each other, and like, fuck, like that kind of blows my mind on some level. But I don't know, like, is it?
Yeah, but after what? I don't think the immediate physical emanation of that happening is going to be like, oh, let me give you a hug.
No, not right away. I mean, there's a process to it, because I feel like there's, as a human being, like you're going to bypass if you just go through something horrific and go, I love everybody. Oh yeah,
yes. I mean,
this person just raped me. I love them.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the only way I can kind of give us some credence is with the understanding that all there are lessons, you know? And so that person's fucking learning their lessons. And so there's a little bit of love in that.
Yeah. And the compassion of like what personal choices and events and other factors led a person to be a person that would do something like that. And to understand that on a deep level. And then also to understand that then like whatever happened that affected you personally is a lesson for you as well. You know, now,
the issue is
there's stages to that.
Yeah.
I personally don't think it's psychologically healthy to go from an experience like something horrific happening to then all of a sudden, like, I mean, maybe there are individuals like that can totally just be there, but it doesn't feel like a natural progression.
The problem with any of these conversations is that, you know, it's the three of us having it, okay? And our listeners, I would say, are on a certain level. But to the general layman, if they're hearing something like this, it just leads to unhealthy tolerance of evil. And this is what ultimately leads to evil proliferating on our planet, right? Because this is the baseline idea of Christianity, right? Love thy neighbor, love your enemy, right? Unconditional love. And that really hasn't served the mass consciousness in the healthiest way based on what we're experiencing.
I don't actually think, I would go so far as to say, I don't think it's actually been embodied even enough to have any impact.
Yeah.
Like,
well, these things are just taken as platitudes.
So you're just saying they pay lip service to it, but people aren't at the level of consciousness to actually embody a teaching.
Well, you talk about Christians, like you're talking about Christianity, Joel. You know, how many Christians have I encountered over the last 20 years who hate my guts because I don't see things the way they see them.
Yeah.
Like, how much unconditional or turn the other cheek have they embodied? Not a lot.
No.
I
It's like unconditional love if you look at the world and behave exactly as I do.
So yeah, no conditions attached. Just do what I need you to do.
Yeah.
So like, what is it that gives rise to evil, if not the allowance of the good, if not the tolerance of the good?
What allows evil to exist?
Yeah. Well, but just based on this conversation, like evil proliferates and intensifies. What's the classic saying? Because good men do nothing, or because good men don't speak out, so to speak.
Is there? It's interesting. Like, I don't want to get too philosophical, but is it? Is evil a thing? Like, to me, I could identify lots of stuff that I think is horrific and diabolical and whatever. But although those are all words that point to mental categories, evil is a mental category. I might put like, the way my hair looks in the morning in the evil mental category. Like, what is evil? Does it really exist objectively? Like, can I go to the supermarket and buy a 6-pack of evil? Yeah.
Well,
Let me ask you this. Like being locked in a room and watching like brutal raping of babies and children, like, would you objectively say that's evil, or would you I'm using an extreme example to
yeah. I take your point completely. Like that's horrific. Like I would experience that as horrific. It's but on the philosophical level, like one of the reasons I bring it up is because we have this conversation at a certain level of consciousness, in a certain state of consciousness. A lot of the like deeper levels or layers have a very different perspective on what is going on, like of the physical experience. Like there are NDEs who have had very deep, profound, life-changing experiences who've come back and gone, well, okay, like I now understand what we would call evil on a whole different level. Like it's not actually what it looks like. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of get what we're coming at, because I'm approaching this conversation from a human standpoint.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to like a soul's experience of life. They may take that differently. So let's say a person who's gone through horrific things, the human form, like me to tell a person right after they went through something horrific, like you chose this, or this is part of your lessons, like probably wouldn't be the ideal thing to say. But then a soul may be like, there was a reason why that happened, because they might not feel things from like a nervous system, physiological standpoint, because that's not their fucking makeup. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly right. That's right. And that, we know from the field of research that, souls choose to have certain experiences. And the fastest path to growth is to experience things that make you challenged or uncomfortable. Like, so it's like, okay, well, that on the human level, like something might be absolutely horrific and unthinkable. But then when you see it from the spiritual level, like that's just maybe let's say that person is dead and everybody involved is dead now. They're on the other side, they're in the spirit world, and they're able to see it from a higher vantage point and go, oh, well, if you haven't done that, I wouldn't have had this growth experience. I wouldn't be able to see things the way I do. It's changed me in a way that has, maybe I don't need to reincarnate like 500 times now. Like you just saved me a whole lot of trouble kind of thing. Like, because I've taken on this lesson, on this message, and embodied it now in a way that wasn't possible until I had that experience. Like just as an example,
And I think when these conversations come up around evil, like it needs to be broad and inclusive, like what we're having right now. You know what I mean? Like, but from just a basic human standpoint, like people objectively would look at certain things and be like, they'll use the word evil. I mean, you said horrific, like horrific, evil. I mean, I don't know, like there's other words that we could probably throw in there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from a human standpoint, and I guess leaning on Ayn Rand a little bit, like how do you define good? And to her, good would be that which promotes life. And so then evil would be that which acts against life. So from an objectivist perspective, every single living organism, its primary value and function is to survive and is to continue to live. Think about the flower facing the sun, or, the animal not thinking twice to get its kill, whatever it might be. And so then, she would define evil as that which acts against the natural function of an organism, which is life.
And the thing is, that's an interesting, like I fully empathize with that. At the same time, what about like, what does a bushfire do? Like a bushfire destroys as it creates. Like it creates a new life and an abundance of life, but it first extinguishes life in the process. Like is a bushfire evil? Is it horrific? Is it diabolical? Like it's just it's a thing. It's just nature.
So I guess so. I mean, I guess the thing is there's multi-dimension perspectives. You know, there's multiple dimensions of conclusions and perspectives and ways of perceiving the same thing, which, you know, obviously holds true.
And I would add, like, just in case anyone out there's misunderstanding, like my basic sort of message is like, if you're using any of the kind of like the spiritual principles or the like lessons to justify hurting people or exploiting people, then like you don't get it. You're off on the wrong path. You're actually going to have a really rough time.
I agree.
Yeah, this has been amazing, actually.
Yeah. Define amazing. What's its opposite?
Can you buy a packet of amazing at the store?
Yeah, exactly. You can.
But well, yeah, I mean, it's my perspective of the experience of the conversation, you know, and me feeling into the value that this conversation can have as well, you know, from subjectively, it feels amazing.
Yeah, subjectively. Like I guarantee you, there's probably like millions and millions of people. If we like force them to watch us, they'd be like, "These guys are fucking crazy."
100%.
These guys are the least amazing 3 gentlemen I've seen in a Zoom room in my entire life.
They're like, this is evil.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that would think it's evil, just like you said earlier about like Christians based on your belief system. Like people would think this and would watch this and be like, these people are out of their fucking mind, and like keep kids away from them.
Yeah. And yet, you know, I know for a fact that like I would absolutely choose to have my community full of people like Joel and Yerasimos and myself, because I know that when, you know, push comes to shove, like we're all men of principle, and we will all take a stand for what we believe is right. And I have a funny feeling we probably agree on what is right 99.9% of the time. Like if there's a fucking mugging happening outside in the street, you want Brendan Murphy living in your neighborhood, living in your street, because I'm likely to do something about it. You know, because I don't like to see people being hurt and suffer and all that stuff. But at the same time, like the spiritual level, philosophical stuff has to be taken into account as well. Like maybe somebody chose to be mugged from a spiritual level before they incarnated to have a certain experience so they could grow in a certain way. Like most people are not here to even be awake spiritually. Most people are not here to even contemplate what consciousness actually is, because it would interfere with the journey they're supposed to have.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely from a psycho-spiritual level, you can make the argument that like people that get mugged, like a lot of times, even from a psychological standpoint, like what's their state that made a perpetrator attract or like be attracted to them?
Wow, right.
No, I'm saying in some situations, like, you know, I use the example of like someone walking down a street in New York City that's like scared and afraid. You know, someone who's looking to do harm is going to go after that person versus someone who's walking down the street super confident, grounded in who they are and moving through the world and kind of, you know, projecting a certain quality or energy out. So that's what I'm saying. Obviously, like, I'm not saying, okay.
I know what you're saying.
But like, if you're into lessons, if you're into learning, like an event happens in your life. You can't change it. It's already happened. Now, what do you do with it? Do you self-reflect and go, oh, like, you know, I shouldn't have been walking down an alley drunk and high at 4 o'clock in the morning in another fucking country.
It's that, you know, it's the classic.
In a shitty part of town.
Yeah, right.
It's that, you know, that Zen allegory of like maybe, you know, like the man, he's a farmer, he has his son falls off the horse, breaks his arm, you know, all the neighbors come, oh, it's so unfortunate. And he goes, maybe, you know, and then, oh, there's a war happening. Oh, your son can't be conscripted to the army. All the neighbors come back, you know, oh, that's such a good, fortunate thing. Maybe, you know, like, who knows in the context.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, what are you excited about?
What I'm excited about? Okay, finishing this second book and getting it out there.
Is that The Grand Illusion 2?
Yep.
Cool. And can you give us like a little, you know, something about what people can expect in part 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's very deep. It's very like, it's a continuation of book one in the sense that it logically progresses from where that one stops. It's a very deep exploration of immortality, the afterlife, the different aspects of self, beyond the physical level of self. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to it, but that's a little bit of a nutshell. Kind of, if people are kind of interested in that stuff that we were talking about earlier, then that's they need to read it.
Cool, man. Nice promo. You should be a promoter.
Should be a marketer, right? But get it on the book 2 wait list, because that's a thing. Maybe we could include the link in the show notes or something.
Oh, it's available. It's available. The wait list on Amazon or something. Or?
No. Like I have for when people want to be notified when it's ready, I have a wait list for that, so people can jump on and just when it's finally done, just go, here it is. It's ready. It's out.
Shoot over the link, and we'll put it there.
Cheers. Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like I've got, and then I'll go open questions, but yeah.
I mean, there's so many questions we can ask. We can go for like 5 hours talking about a million subjects, I'm sure.
Well, the one thing I did want to touch on is like the nature of the brain, right? Because much of the materialist view is that consciousness is located within our heads. And then how does your work correlate with Sheldrake's work with the morphogenetic field, when he's saying the information is external to us, and like there's different levels of consciousness? Like I have a personal consciousness, then also like I have my family consciousness, then like I have a consciousness of even like the place where I'm living. I can receive information just from where I am.
Yeah, I mean, like that's all very related, I guess, to what I was doing. I talk about his idea of the morphogenic field in book 1. Super relevant to research. Yeah. I mean, specifically, I might need you to like hone in on something there for me.
No, you're all good. Basically, I'm just, I guess, wanting you to clarify the point that consciousness doesn't live in our heads, and like you're saying, like the brain is a receiver of this information, of this data.
Yeah, I mean, like we live in the field of information, and the brain is actually I think Stan Grof referred to it as a reducing valve. So it's actually, instead of generating, it's doing the opposite. It's actually, the brain is eliminating 99.9% of our awareness, so that we can, have a particular type of experience. We have tons of information that proves, like categorically proves, that A, consciousness operates beyond the physical body, and B, more to the point, more importantly, actually is not generated by the brain or body at all in the first place. It actually exists completely independently.
Hey, Brendan, is there a book that you would recommend to the audience, that people that are really into, I guess, exploring this, like the deep research? I don't know if it's your book or no, I'm saying if there's other books as well. That like really just, because I'm assuming your book, The Brand Illusion, and the second one, you're not just talking about NDEs. Like it's you're covering so much. But is there a book that really goes into all this research that's being done about NDEs and OBEs and things like that that people can look into?
Well, that's the reason I wrote book 2, because the discussion generally, particularly NDEs, but in general, like what we don't have is there's just a deficit of a model of understanding what's going on, as well as like acknowledging and sharing cool stories and cool NDEs, and like most of the stuff in that field is like a collection of case studies, and this happened to this guy and this happened to this guy, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. But there are too many researchers, particularly the academics, they don't connect their work with other fields of work and other fields of research. So, that's where someone like me has to, like, it's ridiculous. Like the fact that little, like nobody Brendy from the suburbs of Sydney, family of middle-class parents, nobody's heard of, like, I have to do this because it's not being done, and not being done well. People are too stuck in their little sort of like blinkered areas of specialty. And so that's the point of what I'm doing. Like that's really like the book 1 is very, very comprehensive, and it lays the foundation for the book 2 immortality, afterlife stuff. But I do get into it, like the mystical stuff we talked about, the nature of consciousness not being brain-based or body-based. That's all book 1. That's the whole point of book 1. And it's very interesting. Like there are times researching that where, I was just like, wow, this is just the shit that I'm coming up with, like, and finding the research I'm finding, and the dots I was able to connect were unbelievable. So like I know, like I know a lot of what's out there, especially in the field of afterlife, near death, and whatever, because I've been in it for 21 years now, and there's just a real gap there where people have not done the connecting of the fields and then push the conversation to a higher level where it's like, what's the nature of what's going on here and why does it look like that? It's like we're stuck at the level of like kind of telling cool stories and like that's an oversimplification, but the point is I feel like what I've done with book 2 in particular is actually move the conversation to another level and pushed it forward. So that's why I'm excited to get that out hopefully early next year.
Awesome,
And if people that want to get book 1, they could just get that on Amazon or is it your website?
Yeah, go to brendandmurphy.com/TGI for book 1. And I sent you the link for the wait list of book 2 as well.
Yeah. Bro, I think what you're doing is super important and super needed. And I definitely recommend if people are into this conversation to go check out book 1 and jump on that wait list for book 2, man. It's very, very fascinating stuff. Anything you'd like to leave our audience with, I guess, just in closing?
Nothing really comes to mind. I think if they found anything of this interesting, they should they should read my work. Like I'm not I can talk about stuff and we can be here for 2 hours or 20 hours or whatever, but the level of detail, like the reason I write is because the writing does something that I can't do in a conversation. Like it's a whole other thing. So if people want to save themselves 10,000 hours of research, go and read book 1, and then when book 2 is ready, you can save another 10,000 hours of research.
Yeah. Cool, man. Dude, thank you so much for joining us once again. Yeah. Got lots of love for you and your family. Let's go shoot some hoops soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, you play hoops, bro?
Yeah. Are we all hoopers?
Yeah. I mean, I used to a lot back in the days, but not much in the last 20 years. But I could still. We had 5 rounds. I move my 44-year-old body around a little bit still.
We had 5 rounds of table tennis the other day. Brendan got me 3-2 in rounds of 21.
So pretty much, I'll destroy him.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just with you. It's just about getting over your serve. Okay.
I love when people go like, "Oh, it's just about getting over your serve," like a huge aspect of the game. It's like, it's just Michael Jordan. It's just about making him 5'3" or something, or take away his jump shot. You know what? If Michael Jordan didn't have a jump shot,
we played it. Granted, it was once, but we played a game once, Yerasimos and I, with cheaper rackets that don't accumulate as much spin, kind of disabling his serve, and I got a victory over him.
Got 1 win out of 30 games. Barely. He's gonna hold on to that forever.
forever. Even in the afterlife, bro.
Even in our afterlife heaven. You know what? We could play table tennis in afterlife heaven. Are we able to? I mean, do we have physical bodies where we can do that, or is it just we're just gonna think it?
I think in the afterlife, you get badges of all your accomplishments, during your earthly time. My first badge is going to be beat Yerasimos in table tennis once.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Yeah.
There's actually, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a Disney movie called Soul, which seems to be pretty resonant with this conversation in depicting what potentially happens. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Yeah, it's interesting.
I shouldn't add anything else, but they did a job with what's it called? The Robin Williams movie.
What Dreams May Come.
Dreams May Come. Yes, that was actually quite good.
I haven't seen that since it came out. I might have to watch it again because it's beautiful.
Me too.
Very insightful. Anyway,
wasn't there also a movie too? I know it was based off a book, but I haven't seen it. Cloud Atlas, that goes into a lot of different weird, odd stuff and different worlds. And I don't know if you heard of it at all.
Yeah, I did. I saw that years ago, but it was kind of the theme seemed to be parallel selves, ultimates.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Okay, yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Brendan, thanks for being here. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Chris McCormick, RAF graduate. He says, I had reached a glass ceiling and couldn't get beyond the mediocrity of my life that had become overwhelming. This course shattered the glass ceiling into smithereens and provided extremely well thought through steps, knowledge, and experiences to enable progress. The level of detail revealed around the insidious programming we humans have been subjected to allows for a quantum jump in understanding and ability to take one's power back like never before. There's life before Rise Above the Herd, and there is life after. The two are very different. Just make sure you do the work and keep going. Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your experience inside Rise Above the Herd. There's hundreds of other testimonials just like this about our group coaching program. which this will be the 11th time we've running it. We're with over 110 graduates or so. So if this is something that speaks to you and resonates with you, and you're ready to do intentional work to uplift yourself and uplift your life, then I think we've created something really profound. So if you feel the call, head to riseabovetheherd.co and you can submit an application and join the program through there.
Smoking mirrors, I'm seeing through the illusion. Waking up in a time, they think you're in a delusion. Somebody set the alarms, cause they be too busy snoozing. I'm in a DeLorean, fast forward and evolution.